Welcome back, nerds! Today we are counting down more new mutants that you absolutely need to know. On part 1, I only included the 2025 debuts, but as some people pointed out, there's some pretty awesome 2024 mutants that deserve the spotlight too, and that is what we are here to do today. 5. Calico, starting off with my favorite of the bunch because she has a flaming horse for transportation and like fire powers in general. Raised in isolation by overprotective, anti-mutant parents, Becca's only real friend was Ember, her horse, who she eventually developed a psychic connection to due to her traumatic upbringing. Becca's abilities can manifest physically, generating flaming armor around herself and even Ember, or transforming Ember into other horse forms. Despite her privileged appearance, Becca's story is one of overcoming adversity and learning to embrace her identity. Yeah, she's really cool. We love her. 4. Ransom. On a team with Calico and actually our next few heroes, the Outliers, Ransom's mutant ability is unique to say the least. He was born with a black hole in place of his heart. While it is unsettling and a scientific marvel, it allows him to absorb matter, energy, and even attacks directed at him, making him nearly impossible to conventionally hurt. Ransom has fought Wolverine and stood his ground, which is saying something. That's pretty much a very impressive feat. 3. Jitter. Jitter's power is also pretty unique. The technical term is hyper-focus, but really if she concentrates, she can perfect any skill, but only for a minute at a time. So it's like she's a prima ballerina for 1 minute, or a master martial artist for 1 minute. Jitter keeps a stopwatch on her at all times to keep her time, but really she has to be strategic about when she uses her abilities to avoid being powerless in a fight. At least for the time being, her time with the X-Men might help her extend that window. 2. Death Dream. He lives between the living and the deceased. On his birthday, the mutant passed 4 separate times, causing his ability to manifest somewhere along the way, probably the first time, if I had to guess. Death Dream isn't going down unless he wants to. Immune to most poisons and possessing the ability to call upon the souls and powers of the unliving, he can use them to fly, heal. The only weakness really is his powers can be pretty unstable. It's actually the 1-year anniversary of his teams, the Outliers, and his debut. Happy 1 year to them. And finally, number 1, Blank Slate. Blank Slate is exactly what their name says. A blank slate of a person with no personality, appearance, identity, all factors that led to a pretty chaotic introduction. A metamorph that takes on the appearance of the subject and also their personality and memories, Blank Slate has found themselves in a perpetual existential crisis, and they often latch on to others' likenesses, causing a comedy of potentially international errors along the way. Beast was a victim of Blank Slate's mutant abilities, but chose to help the mutant learn who they are and find them the support they needed instead of just like getting mad at them. Blank Slate's ability to fully become a person, memories and all, makes them a potentially dangerous mutant. Their saving grace is that when Blank Slate moves away from the mimicked subject, they actually lose all the abilities and memories almost immediately. Still, they could pretty easily infiltrate a team without anyone ever knowing, or frame someone for a crime, making them one to keep an eye on.
There aren't many X-Men members who have only joined the team in the past decade, but for you nerds, I have managed to find some more. First appearing in Extraordinary X-Men number 17 in December of 2016, Lucid, aka Maya Jackson, was a mutant whose powers developed faster compared to most other mutants. By the age of 10, she had the ability to see through solid objects, and she had big aspirations to join up with her heroes, the X-Men. When the Mpox crisis broke out, however, Maya was visited by Iceman and Magic at her family's home and was offered the chance to move to the safe zone of X-Haven in Limbo. Unfortunately, Maya's mother refused to leave her home, and Maya later fell ill to Mpox, and her mother fled to X-Haven just a little bit too late. Maya's condition had worsened to the point that not even mutant healers could help her. With Maya on her deathbed, her sister managed to get the current leader of the X-Men, Storm, to meet Maya, and just a few moments before she passed away, Maya was officially made a member of the X-Men under the alias she had created for herself, Lucid. She may not be the most powerful of the characters on this list, but her story is pretty powerful, and I like it. Now this next mutant isn't very new to the X-Men, as he first appeared in New X-Men Volume 2, number 7 in December of 2004, but I actually didn't even know he existed until writing this list. His name is Paris Gavaskar, aka Indra. Indra comes from a region outside of Mumbai, India, and when his mutant power of being able to summon a retractable exoskeleton manifested, he enrolled as a student at the Xavier Institute and moved to the United States. Initially, Paris was placed on Alpha Squadron under the watchful eye of Northstar. Paris was one of the few mutants at the Xavier Institute to retain his powers after End Day, and he was one of the young mutants to to take part in a sparring exercise to determine the new X-Men roster, despite the fact that he holds pacifist beliefs. He would later move to San Francisco with the other X-Men before being attacked, losing his powers, and then gaining a power boost, being able to produce psionic armor and offensive tools. He would side with Wolverine during the Schism event and relocated to Krakoa in the modern age. Next up, first appearing in X-Men Blue #6 in June of 2017, the Madripoor mutant calling herself Gazing Nightshade, which is the coolest name ever, was part of the ruthless mutant vigilantes who were inspired by Wolverine called the Raksha. This group was stopped by Jimmy Hudson and the X-Men and eventually were invited to the X-Mansion. Now, Gazing Nightshade has the really cool mutant ability of despair inducement, meaning whoever Nightshade gazes upon enters into a trance-like state of sorrow fueled by their deepest regrets. And to make it just 10 times more metal, both the eyes of Gazing Nightshade's victims and her own eyes bleed when she uses her powers. That is super cool, but also kind of terrifying. She joins Polaris's makeshift roster of X-Men in X-Men Blue #25 in 2018 before going back to the Raksha. Now, this one may be a bit of a controversial pick. Marvel has been doing some interesting things with the character of Kamala Khan recently. Kamala has been a favorite of many Marvel fans as Miss Marvel since her first appearance in 2014. When she first gained her powers, it was due to her being exposed to the Terrigen Mist and undergoing inhuman Terrigenesis. Kamala discovered she was now a polymorph and could change her body into virtually anything. Cool, so she's an Inhuman. She was mega popular and joined a bunch of different teams, including the Avengers. Very recently though, Kamala actually ended up biting the dust in a very high profile and pretty controversial move in the pages of Amazing Spider-Man #26. But then, in X-Men The Hellfire Gala 2023 #1, Miss Marvel was resurrected on the mutant nation of Krakoa. Charles Xavier then explains to Kamala that she was able to be resurrected because of her latent X gene, and that apparently he has known her to be a mutant for quite some time. Xavier explains that she is in fact a mutant and an Inhuman, something that should be impossible because the Terrigen Mists are supposed to take the lives of those who possess an X gene. But because Kamala underwent Terrigenesis, her X gene never actually manifested her powers yet. Now she's running around with the X-Men, admittedly not doing very much. Angelica Jones, also known as Firestar, has the awesome mutant ability of microwave energy manipulation and generation. She uses the Earth's magnetic field and converts it into microwave radiation. She also absorbs microwave radiation from her environment and from stars in the galaxy. She can then focus this energy at targets or to do different things. She can set targets on fire, explode them, and even melt them. She is constantly keeping her powers in check because she has the potential to damage the entire Earth and its atmosphere with her abilities, which is why she is even more powerful in space, where she isn't limited by the fragility of the Earth. Now, Angelica first appeared in Uncanny X-Men #193 in February of 1985, but crucially, she was actually a villain. She was loyal to Emma Frost and her school of mutants, and would be on the Hellions, the New Warriors, the Avengers, and the Young Allies before she joined the X-Men in Amazing X-Men Volume 2 #1 in 2013. And she has been on different iterations of the team, even serving as the secret double agent within Orchis during the current Fall of X event. Speaking of the Fall of X, when Orchis made their attack on Krakoa at the most recent Hellfire Gala, it was quite literally just as the new team of X-Men were finally announced. Among that team of mutants was Prodigy, aka David Alain. Growing up, David was always bright and intelligent, but when his mutant powers activated, his intelligence seemed to double and answers became almost instant for him. That's because his mutant ability is to telepathically absorb the knowledge and skills of anyone nearby. I wish I had that power. Although he first appeared in 2003, he was first placed on Moonstar's New Mutants training squad and went on to join the New X-Men in 2008, and has been on X-Factor Investigations, New Mutants, the Champions Reinforcement roster, the Young Avengers, the New Mutant Squad, all before finally making it onto the actual premier X-Men team, only to be completely obliterated by Nimrod. Sorry. Now all the way back in the day, when Hope Summers came back from her future travels with Cable, there were 5 mutants whose X-gene and abilities were activated following M-Day. These 5 were known as the Lights, and they were the first mutants since the events of M-Day, making them pretty important. IJ Onkokwo was 14 years old, living in Nigeria's Delta State when her mutant powers of thermokinesis activated, causing her to accidentally burn down her entire village. She was almost taken out by the military until the X-Men showed up to save her. Now under the direction of Hope Summers and with the consent of Cyclops, Okonkwo, who took on the name Oya, and the other Lights began training as a rescue team for any other new mutant manifestations. Oya's ability of thermokinesis allows her to alter temperatures around her, with the limitation being that she cannot simply create hot or cold temperatures, she can only rechannel pre-existing temperature, meaning she needs the presence of heat to generate cold, and vice versa. Now Oya first appeared in Uncanny X-Men number 528 in September of 2010, and under the name Tempest, she will be joining a new group of X-Men led by Cyclops later this year, alongside another interesting new X-Man. Although Kane Marco, also known as the Juggernaut, has been around since 1965 and had an on-again, off-again relationship with the X-Men ever since Uncanny X-Men number 425 from June of 2003, when he first joined the team, it never really stuck. He would return to a life of villainy, usually thanks to Sidorak, who isn't really a fan of helping people. Therefore, it is totally valid, in my mind, to say that Juggy only really joined the X-Men for reals in Uncanny X-Men Volume 5, number 16 from 2019. The X-Men were fighting the latest incarnation of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, led by an imposter Magneto. Juggernaut didn't like that he was working for an imposter, so he took down the imposter and decided to join the X-Men. He would be voted on to the newest incarnation of the X-Men at the most recent Hellfire Gala, before almost the entire team was brutally decimated by Orcus. When Marvel relaunches their X-Men titles in the summer of 2024, this year, Juggernaut is on the roster for the main Cyclops-led X-Men team alongside Beast, Magneto, Psylocke, Kid Omega, Temper, and Magic. But speaking of the X-Men relaunch that is happening, we are getting 3 main X-Men titles. There is just the X-Men, which is the team that Juggernaut is on, led by Cyclops, but we will also have the Uncanny X-Men, which is a team led by Rogue, with Wolverine, Gambit, Nightcrawler, and Jubilee, and in Eve Ewing and Carmen Carnero's Exceptional X-Men, Kate Pryde, Shadowcat, will become a mutant teacher again in Chicago, working with Emma Frost, and 3 entirely new young mutants named Bronze, Axo, and Melee. Being so new, and with their book not starting for a few more months, we actually have basically no information on any of these mutants. The only thing I could really find here is another character named Melee, who first appeared in 2007 as part of the Civil War 50 States Initiative, and she doesn't have any information outside of that era of Marvel, and she wasn't even a mutant that we know of. So it seems that this new Melee and her 2 new X-Men newbies are freshly created for the new Exceptional X-Men title, so I'm excited to learn more. But finally, we arrive at Synch. Synch has the mutant ability of power mimicry, meaning, like Rogue, Synch can copy the powers of other mutants. But unlike Rogue, Synch has the benefit of not doing harm to whoever he is borrowing powers from, and he can also do it without physical touch. Recently though, after being resurrected, Synch got a bit of a power boost, and he may even become a new Omega level mutant. In the story, Synch not only uses his normal mutant powers to replicate the abilities of the mutants Sunfire and Cyclops while they were both nearby, but he's also able to tap into Jean Grey's telekinetic abilities while she is on Mars. Synch's growth in power post-resurrection was first noticed back in 2021's X-Men number 18, with Synch documenting that he was now able to sync not just with mutants, but other superhumans as well, which is quite the boost, and I think it just keeps going up and up and up. In the House of M alternate reality, Synch even got to the point of permanently retaining others' powers, which would be an incredibly significant power boost as well. As a main member of the X-Men though, it's hard to be surprised that he's getting power boosts. Are you bored of the same old X-Men? Well, here are 10 pretty new ones. Now when I say the name Pyro, most X-Men fans will think of St. John Alderdice, who has been around since the 80s, but that's not who I'm talking about today. Simon Lasker is the newest version of Pyro, debuting in 2017. When Lasker first manifested his mutant powers, Mesmero appeared to him in the form of Charles Xavier and brainwashed him into taking the name Pyro and joining a new Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. And this group of mutants were defeated by the X-Men and the brainwashing was broken. From there, he went on to join the X-Men Blue Team. Lasker's powers were very similar to the original Pyro, with the only difference being that he could generate his own flame, not needing an existing flame for him to control. Unfortunately though, the character went to the pearly gates in 2020, not to be seen since. Meanwhile, the original Pyro went on to join the Krakoan Marauders. Debuting in Wolverine and the X-Men Volume 2 Number 1 in March of 2014, Lynn Lee, aka Nature Girl, started off at Jean Grey's School for Higher Learning. When Kitty Pryde relocated the X-Men to Central Park and the school was renamed to the Xavier Institute for Mutant Education and Outreach, Lynn Lee decided to join in. She became part of Jubilee's X team in Generation X Volume 2 Number 2 in 2017. But after she witnessed some of the horrible things humanity was and is doing to the Earth and to nature, she instead became an eco-warrior fighting back against humanity, which makes sense given her powers. Nature Girl's powers are directly connected to the natural world, so she can communicate, influence, manipulate, and control nature, animals, plants, and natural phenomena like the weather and geology of the Earth. She was on the run from Wolverine for a while and was able to get away from him a few times using her abilities, and more recently, she mutated even more and became even more uncontrollable, but she looks pretty awesome, so we can let that kind of thing slide. Debuting in Powers of X Number 1, which released in early 2019, Rasputin IV is one of the more interesting recent additions to the X-Men, but she's also one of the most overpowered. Created as possibly the most powerful of Mr. Sinister's chimeras, which were basically spliced together mutants who possess more than one hero's power, Rasputin IV possesses 5 different powers. 5. She has the osmium metal skin of Colossus, the telekinesis and telepathy of Quentin Quire, the force fields of Gunther Bane, aka Unis the Untouchable, the intangibility of Kitty Pryde, and just to top it all off, she has the healing factor of X-23 Laura Kinney. So as you can imagine, she is a force to be reckoned with. And on top of that, she wields the Soul Sword. Currently, as far as I've read, Rasputin IV is working pretty closely with Charles Xavier to fight back against Orchis and others during the fall of X. Now, while she was initially controlled by Sinister, he himself undid that, and together the two actually saved the entire universe, with Rasputin doing most of the heavy lifting. Shilpa Khatri first showed up in 2018's X-Men Red Number 1 as a new mutant joining Jean Grey's team of X-Men. Now, Shilpa was a young mutant from India who developed technopathic mutant abilities, and she first used them to top up the bank accounts of every working Indian woman using the money from 25 of the highest earning CEOs in India. While I think that's pretty awesome and kind of hilarious, her father did not, and he reported his own daughter to the Indian Mutant Defense Force, which is where Jean Grey and her team rescued Trinary from. As a technopath, she has the ability to psychically control all forms of technology such as computers, cell phones, and all that junk. Now, her limitations at this time is that she can only control technology that is in her line of sight, and her range is currently undetermined, but judging from other technopaths, she has potential to get much stronger. Trinary was one of the mutants recorded to X-Corps by Mirage following the mutant massacre at the Hellfire Gala. With WizKid, Trinary helped to run X-Corps Island and keep it cloaked away from Orchis. Next up, Eva Bell first was seen in All New X-Men Number 1 in 2012, when we also first saw her mutant powers manifest. She was out with her friends, and a boy, when her brother showed up and began to get into a fight with said boy. The stress and duress of the situation caused her powers to just pop off, and she completely froze everyone within a city block of her in time for 20 hours until the X-Men showed up, helped her, and took her in. She has been referred to as near Omega level with her ability of chronokinesis within a time bubble, meaning she can freeze and slow down time and is one of the best at it in the world. She can speed up time in the bubble by decades if she chooses to, which she uses as a member of the Five to age up whoever is being resurrected, and she can even time travel. Although she has shown to lose control over her powers from time to time, there is no doubt that she is and can become more incredibly powerful. Although initially introduced in 2010, Jimmy Hudson was actually the son of Wolverine and Magda Lencher, but crucially in the Ultimate Marvel Universe. Now he would go on to join that universe's X-Men as Wolverine following the passing of the original Wolverine, but then, following the events of Secret Wars, Jimmy found himself within the main Marvel Universe in X-Men Blue #5, where he is tracked down in the Canadian wilderness by the time-displaced original X-Men, who he attacked, believing they were working for Mr. Sinister. After fending off an attack by Sinister's new team of Marauders, the X-Men offered him a place on the team. Now Jimmy would remain a part of the team throughout the series, aiding them in various different missions, such as an adventure in outer space that saw him bonded with the Poison symbiote, and those two have been having a bit of an identity crisis. Although he had thought himself and his powers ridiculous, which they kind of are if we're being honest, Fabio Medina, aka Egg, and his battle cry Gold Balls is kind of awesome. Debuting in 2013, Fabio can produce golden balls of different sizes that shoot out from any part of his body and make the sound poink each time they hit something, and it is hilarious. The golden balls he fires actually seem to bounce. Now, that's pretty odd, but these gold balls are actually more useful than initially thought. After he moved to Krakoa with the other mutants, it was discovered that Gold Balls' balls are actually infertile eggs, and if these eggs are made fertile, it could allow for unlimited resurrection of the mutant race. So yes, the golden balls he was firing out of his body at Sentinels and bad guys were actually infertile, bouncy golden eggs. Does it make me slightly uncomfortable? Yes, but he did become a member of the Five that combined their powers to resurrect deceased mutants, and that was really cool. Next up, Gabby Kenny, aka Scout, also at one point known as Honey Badger, may be young, but she has more than proved herself when she became a part of the X-Men in 2018. Scout is just awesome. Like a little feisty killing machine with adamantium bone sickles and a crazy regenerative healing factor that also improves her strength, speed, and stamina. Gabby first appeared in All New Wolverine #2 in 2015, and she had a long history that, just like her other clone sisters, intertwined a lot with Laura Kinney, her genetic sister, and Wolverine, her genetic father. As Honey Badger, Gabby was seemingly a favorite of her sister and basically became a sidekick to Laura Kinney, joining Jean Grey's X-Men alongside her sister in X-Men Red #1 in 2018. While Laura went on to become the new Wolverine, Gabby would go on to become Scout and one of the main Wolverine family members. Also, her and Jonathan the Unstoppable, an actual Wolverine, like the animal, shared a pretty immediate bond, and he is basically her pet and sidekick, which is just so cool to me. Becoming an X-Men member in 2012 in New Mutants Volume 3 #45, Blank is the mutant leader of the Exiles, a group responsible for the repairing of timelines and worlds of the multiverse. She has the gift of teleportation, but unlike characters like Nightcrawler, Blank's teleportation abilities work through portals. This is really useful as she can teleport a whole group of people, and she can teleport others specifically through the use of javelin-like energy that she can throw at whatever or whoever she wants to teleport. These javelins can also be used to make opponents unconscious when it hits them. She is an exceptional fighter, having trained under Sabretooth, and she needs that skill, especially as she leads the Exiles. Also, fun fact, she had her live-action debut in the X-Men Days of Future Past movie. During that super awesome intro where the X-Men fight the Sentinels, Blink is the mutant throwing all the pink portals around and being awesome, until she got. Then she stopped. And last up for today, Multiple Man is an interesting choice for this list, as he has been around for a really long time in comics, but while he has been a hero for a good chunk of that time, he is still only a recent addition to the X-Men. Multiple Man was recruited in 2019's Uncanny X-Men Volume 5 #13. Jamie or James Madrox is actually a changeling, which is sort of like a genetic precursor to mutants who gain their abilities at birth instead of having their X gene activated later on. For James, his power is that of duplication. He can duplicate himself multiple times upon impact and and each of his dupes can create one single dupe of its own. One of the real benefits of this power though is that Prime Madrox will retain any memories of any of his dupes. So let's say you have to read like 10 books in a week. Well, you could have like 10 dupes all read one book each, and then when they re-merge with you, you have all their memories of each book. Multiple Man is like an information gathering powerhouse, but he can also use his ability to learn skills, like one of his dupes trained as a Shaolin monk and trained in meditation. One was a trained EMT, one audited an anatomy class for 6 months, one passed the New York bar exam, and one claimed to be the world's greatest detective. He's definitely one of my favorite mutants.
Welcome back! Some iconic New Mutants have debuted this year, and I just have to talk about them. Some of these mutants have the power to literally reshape the Marvel Universe, so let's jump in. 5. Lady Henrietta. Making her debut in April this year, Lady Henrietta could not be cooler if she tried. Not only is she dressed better than any other mutant in history, she was the victim of a less tolerant time and still persevered through life with grace and kindness. Now, she's the guardian of Penumbra, the realm of the dead. Henrietta can transform her body into obsidian and can create golems from rock, which she does control. 4. Jovius. This avatar-looking mutant sacrificed himself for the good of mutant kind, inspiring the mutant underground. Only, he actually survived. Jovius worked on Krakoa as a record keeper, but when the island was attacked, he stayed behind to protect the archives. He was presumed deceased, but in reality, survived. He now works for the US government in a top secret division. With his vast knowledge of mutant history, Jovius could be a key player in upcoming stories. 3. Utina. Self-loathing takes on a new form with Letitia Leach. Leach absolutely hates mutants. She starred in a movie that paints mutants in a bad light. Literally is an anti-mutant influencer. The gag is, she is a mutant. She has the ability to teleport using darkness, entering one shadow and emerging out another. It's kind of giving Batman core, doesn't it? She also has limited mind reading capabilities. She was detained by the X-Men, and I'm really hoping that they get her a good therapist and some real friends. 2. Robin Cobb. In a set of twins, Robin was the mutant that was absorbed in the womb by her sister Piper. She remained conscious in Piper, despite no one actually knowing that. Piper wasn't able to keep her sister's power in check and almost eliminated her entire town, catching the attention of a Sentinel and of course the X-Men. The X-Men were able to help Piper, but Robin ended up possessing an Acanti corpse after being influenced by Cassandra Nova. Her story is ongoing and promises even more dramatic reveals than a secret, powerful twin absorbed in the womb. 1. Justina. Justina LaGuardia is so powerful, she was able to erase the mind of Professor X. She isn't a telepath. Her ability is power mimicry with a twist. Any power that she mimics, she will automatically be better. Even if it's just a human that runs fast, she's faster. Or that they draw well now she is like Leonardo da Vinci. She's stronger, she's smarter, she's able to erase the mind of one of the most powerful telepaths ever. Does she have limits? Could she become the most powerful mutant to ever exist? I have so many questions about her. Justina could easily become one of the X-Men's key players if they can only convince her to join the team. She did say as she was erasing Xavier's mind that when the time is right she will reveal her powers to the world, but until then she's reaping the rewards of her ability.
A lot has happened to the X-Men, in general, but particularly over the past decade or so. A lot of mutants have had their crack at being a part of the mutant race's premier superhero team, and we're gonna talk about them. Now, the mutant armor isn't a new X-Men member in the regular 616 universe, but recently, as in this year, 2024, the year of our Lord, thanks to the newly formed Marvel Ultimate Universe and Peach Momoko, we are getting a new interesting take on her character. Ultimate X-Men #1 stars Hisako Ichiki, aka Armor, as she first uncovers her mutant abilities. Now, first of all, Peach Momoko sets this story in Japan, and the whole thing is just this mix of cute, but also very heavy and super cool. What's interesting about this take on Armor, and possibly the other mutants going forward for the Ultimate Universe, is how their abilities appear to be a bit more magically oriented. In the story, her powers appear to be almost supplied by a strange amulet she's given by a friend who then lost his life. Now, that's just me speculating. After a shadowy presence who people are guessing may be the Shadow King appears to Hisako, she is riding her bike away from where they met, and her power activates as a car nearly hits her, and her enormous armor stops it dead in its tracks. Definitely give that first issue a read if you get a chance, cause I glossed over a lot. Next up, Joanna Cargill, like a lot of the X-Men, started off as a villain. She ran away from home after her mutant powers activated and she caused the passing of her not-so-great dad in self-defense. From there, she would join Apocalypse's Alliance of Evil, which is a silly name, where she would do battle with the X-Men. Now, gifted with skin that is extremely strong and resistant to attacks, Frenzy became an X-Men member in 2011 in X-Men Legacy number 250. Her steel-hard skin is so strong that it has only ever been penetrated by adamantium. She is also highly resistant to extreme hot and cold, as well as radiation, and she can withstand high-impact forces like Cyclops' optic beam or a punch from She-Hulk. Now, speaking of She-Hulk, a byproduct of Frenzy's power is that she has super strength as well, enough to lift around 25 to 75 tons. And she can punch Jennifer Walters back if she really wants to. Frenzy has gone toe-to-toe with Rogue, arguably one of the most powerful X-Men, and she was classified as a level 6 threat by Cable, who helped hone her exceptional skills as a hand-to-hand combatant. Now, going back, if you need more incentive to read that new Ultimate X-Men, then I shall give you some. At the end of the very first issue, the cover of the second issue, which I haven't actually been able to read yet, features a completely new character who goes by the hero name Maystorm. Now, Maystorm is confirmed to have weather abilities and is clearly inspired by the revolutionary Storm from Ultimate Black Panther. Inspired by, but this is a wholly new character with their own unique design, and it seems the character will be joining both Armor and a few other characters that I'm going to talk about in a minute as the first new Ultimate X-Men team. Momoko created this character for last year's New Champions variant cover, but Maystorm will finally debut in Ultimate X-Men number 2 of this year. Similar to Frenzy, Quentin Quire used to be a sort of villain back in the New X-Men. He spent his earlier years being an absolutely despicable kid who I always kind of wanted to just like kick in the shins. He was trying to be an anarchist leader of mutants and ended up doing more harm than good. After the schism of the X-Men, Wolverine took him to the school that he opened up. In a relatively short amount of time, Quentin became a more well-rounded character, and now he is someone I think is actually kind of cool. He still stayed a bit of a rebel and a narcissistic jerk, which you would think would make people hate him, but when he stops trying to cause anarchy, these traits end up becoming a fun aspect of his personality. Now on Krakoa, he's back to annoying Wolverine and being pretty insufferable, but it's to a point where you kind of love him for it, maybe just a little bit. What's a little bit less fun is that recently, Quentin got his head lopped off and placed in an Orcus container designed to make use of mutant body parts by Sabretooth. Now he recently called in the Exiles for help using his powers, so we shall see where that goes. Okay, I hope y'all don't mind, but I've got another of the new Ultimate X-Men that I'm going to talk about, and their name is Nico Minoru. Now, this is where things get really interesting and leads me to believe even more that these new X-Men will find some of their origins being influenced by magic and mysticism. Nico is a Japanese magical hero who uses the powerful Staff of One, and it's very interesting because on Earth 616, Minoru is not a mutant at all. In normal canon, she is a descendant of a magical family who are part of a cult. Nico steals her parents' staff after finding out that they are part of this cult, and she uses it alongside the team of teenagers known as the Runaways. Now, with full transparency, it is unclear yet if Momoko will be retconning Nico into being a mutant, or if the blending of magic and mutation in Ultimate X-Men will see her magical bloodline coming into play, but she does appear to be a part of this new team of X-Men that is forming, which is something I am excited to see play out. Next up, Monet St. Croix has an interesting past, and her family is a big part of that. Her brother is an incredibly powerful bad dude who trapped her in a different form where she is known as Penance. As Penance, she had diamond skin, a telepathic resistance, and super sharp claws. M can even combine with her younger siblings Claudette and Nicole, but on her own, Monet is essentially a near perfect being. All her physical and mental skills are greater than the natural physical limits of peak humans, including her intuition and her genius level intellect. She can fly at supersonic speeds by sheer force of will, she can read minds, project her thoughts into the minds of others, and defensively mask her mind against telepathic intrusion, and has even displayed some telekinesis. M, or Penance, became a part of the X-Men in 2013 in X-Men Volume 4, number 7. Okay nerds, I have one more Ultimate X-Men to talk about, and then I promise we will keep talking about actual 616 heroes. Peach Pomoko's design sheets have also included two new mutants, Mori and Natsu, whose origins have not really been revealed at all, and we don't know much more than understand their names and their designs. However, the internet has still learned some things from that alone. The two biggest things of note about the information we have is that one of the names, Natsu, means summer in Japanese, and one of these new mutants has one blindfolded eye and one red eye, which is under some kind of visor device thing. Now Summer, as you might know, is a big name in the X-Men world, and with the red eye and all that jazz, fans believe that the character of Natsu could be a version of Cyclops or Scott Summers, or maybe a character at least inspired by Cyclops, although the design is different enough that the character will definitely stand as their own person. To be honest, that whole one eye thing is also kind of giving me Cable vibes, but I have no idea how that would even work, so for now, we're sticking with possibly Cyclops. Maybe. Now, although he first appeared in 2007 and was briefly on the X-Men in 2009, as a 2018 recruit to the X-Men and X-Men Red number 4, Gentle is someone I kinda just love talking about, so I'm including him on the list. Gentle's mutant ability is muscle mass expansion, which allows him to increase his size and strength almost instantly. He's done battle against a Sentinel and his strength is said to rival Colossus's, with his resting strength increased every time he uses his powers. Gentle is a very strong and powerful mutant, but the catch is that he only uses his powers in emergencies. Because of his poor treatment he suffered as a child, Gentle suffers great pain and seizures. To help his condition, Gentle's entire body was covered with vibranium tattoos in Wakanda to prevent him from overexerting, and they essentially keep him alive. On top of that, Gentle has pacifist beliefs, but his calm, peaceful demeanor should not fool anyone because Gentle has used his abilities to halt the one Sentinel from destroying the Xavier Institute, and he's such a cool character. A listed X-Men member since 2017, Inc. sets himself apart from anyone else on this list by having the unique distinction of being a normal human being who received his powers through being tattooed by a mutant. Basically, the mutant who was the giver of his tattoos imbued those tattoos with powers, but the coolest thing about these powers is that they change into whatever tattoo he chooses to use. That's probably the worst way to explain it, so let me give some examples. Ink can make others who touch him extremely sick using a biohazard symbol tattoo that he received on his hand. He used this one on some cops who tried to arrest him in a tattoo shop when he first showed up. He gained superhuman strength from a tattoo that mimics Colossus's osmium metal skin. 2 lightning bolt symbols on his temples give him low-level telepathy. He's got a tattoo of wings for flight, an explosion that lets him explode stuff, and a caduceus symbol that lets him heal others, among other tattoos. But the real show of how powerful he can be came when he got the Phoenix symbol as a tattoo that actually gave him Phoenix powers, which is nuts. His Phoenix Force symbol tattoo allowed him to defeat the Y-Men, and he keeps all these tattoos able to use whichever one he needs in the moment. It's awesome. But last on our list today is Old Man Logan. Now, most of you know this Logan from the amazing Old Man Logan story and reality, where basically everything is ruined. The villains rule over everything with an iron fist in this wasteland. That is a whole story that we have talked about tons of times, but after the events of Secret Wars in 2015, crotchety old Logan made his way to the Prime 616 universe when main Wolverine had bit the dust, temporarily of course. Old Man Logan stepped in and sort of not really took over his place. Now this Logan didn't have the same berserker rage and he was much wiser. The main difference was he didn't fly off the handle as often. He didn't go off on his own and do things that may have put his team in danger, and his biggest accomplishment may have been wiping out both the evil Hulk from his own world and another evil Hulk, Maestro, in Earth Prime. Unfortunately, Old Man Logan finally went to the afterlife in 2019, back in his home reality. Coming in at number 10, it's Pickles. I think his name alone just made me want to include him on this list. Pickles is what is known as a Banff, a race of demons who are basically little Nightcrawler-like imps, who possess similar attributes and powers as Nightcrawler and Azazel. Pickles himself lived inside Beast's van and was a backup in case anyone needed immediate transport somewhere, but he would later travel with Jean Grey and the X-Men in Jean Grey number 1 from 2017. As a Banff, Pickles can teleport by displacing himself into the Brimstone dimension, travel through it, and then return to the original dimension at a certain distance from the point of departure. But unlike Nightcrawler, Pickles doesn't require foreknowledge of his destination in order to safely teleport there. But much like Nightcrawler, Pickles can stick to objects with the surface of his hands and feet, and he's got a sweet little prehensile tail. This little imp also possesses an unknown degree of muscle memory mimicry, which enables him to quickly learn and perform new martial arts with little instruction or training. He's definitely one of those few minor X-Men characters, but he's just so cute. Number 9. Gazing Nightshade. First appearing in X-Men Blue number 6 in June of 2017, the Madripoor mutant calling herself Gazing Nightshade was part of a ruthless mutant vigilante group who were inspired by Wolverine called the Raksha. The group was stopped by Jimmy Hudson and the X-Men and eventually were invited to the X-Mansion. Gazing Nightshade has the really cool mutant ability of despair inducement, meaning whoever Nightshade gazes upon enters into a trance-like state of sorrow, fueled by their deepest regrets. And to make it just 10 times more metal, both the eyes of Gazing Nightshade's victims and her own eyes bleed when she uses her powers. I mean, that's not the coolest thing. She joins Polaris' makeshift roster of X-Men in X-Men Blue number 25 in 2018 before going back to the Raksha. Number 8. Trinary. Shilpa Khatri first showed up in 2018's X-Men Red number 1 as a new mutant joining Jean Grey's team of X-Men. Shilpa was a young mutant from India who developed technopathic mutant abilities, and first used them to top up the bank accounts of every working Indian woman using the money from 25 of the biggest earning CEOs in India. That's pretty cool. And while I think that's awesome and kind of hilarious, her father did not, and he reported his own daughter to the Indian Mutant Defense Force, which is where Jean Grey and her team rescued Trinary from. As a technopath, she has the ability to psychically control all forms of technology, such as computers, cell phones, and all that junk. Her limitation at this time is that she can only control technology that is in her line of sight, and her range is currently undetermined, but judging from other technopaths, she has potential to get much stronger. It just remains to be seen. Number 7. Gabby Kenny. We included Laura Kinney on the last list, so is it cheating to use her clone? I personally say no, because Gabrielle Kinney, aka Honey Badger and recently Scout, is just awesome. Like a little feisty killing machine with adamantium bone sickles and crazy regenerative healing factor, and that also improves her strength, speed, and stamina. Gabby first appeared in All New Wolverine number 2 in 2015, and she had a long history that, just like her other clone sisters, intertwined a lot with Laura, her genetic sister, and Wolverine, her genetic father. As Honey Badger, Gabby was seemingly a favorite of her sister, and basically became a sidekick to Laura Kinney, joining Jean Grey's X-Men alongside her sister in X-Men Red number 1 in 2018. While Laura went on to become the new Wolverine, Gabby would go on to become Scout, and one of the main Wolverine family members. Oh, also her and Jonathan the Unstoppable, an actual Wolverine, like the animal, shared an immediate bond, and he is basically her pet, which is both really cool and kind of hilarious. Number 6. Gentle. Although Nesno Abidemi, son of a Wakandan woman and a Russian man, first appeared in 2006, he was only a student at the Xavier Institute until he joined the X-Men in 2009's Uncanny X-Men. Because of his father, Gentle was never treated right in Wakanda, even by his own mom, which is a little hypocritical because, you know, she got pregnant with a dude, but whatever. He was raised at the Wakandan royal court and was sent to the Xavier Institute by Aurora Monroe when his powers first manifested. Gentle's mutant ability is muscle mass expansion, which allows him to increase his size and strength almost instantly. He's done battle with a Sentinel, and his strength is said to rival Colossus, with his resting strength increasing every time he uses his powers. Because of his poor treatment though, he suffered from psychological trauma, which caused him to suffer great pain and seizures. To help his condition, Gentle's entire body was covered with vibranium tattoos to prevent him from overexerting, and they essentially keep him alive, with the added side effect of looking sick. Number 5. Oya. When Hope Summers came back from her future travels with Cable, there were 5 mutants whose X gene and abilities activated. These 5 were known as the Lights, and they were the first mutants since the events of M-Day, making them pretty important. Ide Okonkwo was 14 years old, living in Nigeria's Delta State when her mutant powers of thermokinesis activated, causing her to accidentally burn down her village. She was almost taken out by the military until the X-Men showed up to save her. Now, under the direction of Hope, and with the consent of Cyclops, the Lights began training as a rescue team for any other new mutant manifestations. Ide's ability of thermokinesis allows her to alter temperatures around her, with the limitation being that she cannot simply create hot or cold temperatures. She can only rechannel pre-existing temperature, meaning she needs the presence of heat to generate cold, and cold to generate heat, and vice versa. Oya first appeared in Uncanny X-Men number 528 in September of 2010. Number 4. Armor. Hisako Ichiki lived in Tokyo, Japan with her brother and parents when her mutant abilities activated, and she joined the Xavier Institute. She first appeared becoming just a student and member of Kitty Pryde's Paladin Squad in Astonishing X-Men Volume 3 in 2004, and would go on to become a member of the New X-Men after participating in Emma Frost's Battle Royale in New X-Men Volume 2 number 23 and 26. But finally, she officially joined the main X-Men team in Astonishing X-Men Volume 3 number 25 in 2008. Hisako's powers are pretty cool. As you might suspect from her name, Armor can generate strong, powerful, durable, and impenetrable psionic exoskeleton armor around her entire physical body that augments her strength, endurance, stamina, agility, invulnerability, and durability. The power of her abilities are greatly tied to her family and bloodline. So, for example, the strength, power, and size of her psionic armor greatly enhances when her relatives pass away. Which, I mean, if she was a villain, that could go south pretty quick. But luckily she's not, so we're good. Number 3. Bloodstorm. This is probably a bit of a spicy choice for this list. Bloodstorm is none other than Aurora Monroe, only she is from a different universe. Earth 21710 to be specific. This version of Aurora was a thief living in the streets of Egypt when she attempted to pickpocket a man who turned out to be Dracula. She was turned into a vampire and eventually managed to free herself from Dracula's control and find new purpose among the X-Men. Unfortunately for her though, her thirst for blood overpowered her, which resulted in her ending at least both Beast and Professor X. But it could have been more. She was recruited by the Goblin Queen of Earth 91240 as one of her Hexmen, and they invaded Earth 616, where Bloodstorm decided to switch sides and help the time-displaced X-Men Blue team. She was eventually recruited to the team by Cyclops. Now this is obviously Aurora Monroe, and even if she is from another universe, she is still extremely powerful. But on top of that, she has all the powers of vampirism, including being capable of transforming her body into mist and a flock of bats, and using her gaze to hypnotize people into doing her bidding. Number 2. Genesis. Honestly, don't know how y'all are gonna feel about this one. Evan Sabanur was created by Phantom X as a clone of Apocalypse, and as such has a lot of his powers, including superhuman strength, superhuman durability, and self-molecular manipulation, meaning Evan has total control over the molecular structure of his own body, enabling him to alter his form at will. He is able to transform his limbs into various weapons and equipment, such as blades and bludgeons for combat, or rocket boots for flight, as well as being able to alter his body to change in size. Evan also has a healing factor that can regenerate from serious injury like getting gashed by Daken's claws. And he can adapt his body to any disease or environment at will, and sometimes subconsciously. Another small, innocent ability Evan has is the potential for virtually any conceivable superhuman power ever. He once showcased fire or plasma breath when fighting Faithful John's mind drones, and also has a degree of energy projection, able to project dematerializer blasts from his eyes and emit energy blasts from his hands. He first appeared in Uncanny X-Force number 7 in 2011, but wasn't on the X-Men team until 2014, and even then, kind of as a student. As the clone of Apocalypse, Evan will potentially develop any of the powers possessed by him, but it also means people do fear him, which leaves him with a bit of an insecurity. And number 1, Darwin. Even somewhat casual fans of the X-Men know who Darwin is, if only because he was that guy who is supposed to be able to adapt to anything but gets de-lifed in like 2 seconds in the X-Men First Class movie. People were mad. And honestly, yeah, so was I. That makes no sense. Adapt to this, shut up. He literally could have. Armando Munoz, or Darwin, was first introduced in X-Men Deadly Genesis number 2 in December of 2005, and he would join the X-Men shortly after that. Darwin's powers are just the coolest. He's able to adapt to any situation. So basically, using his powers, he's been able to grow functioning gills after being submerged in water, gain night vision after being in the dark for several seconds, be able to survive without oxygen when in space, his skin has become fireproof when it's exposed to flames, and after touching Hela, Darwin became a death deity and gained powers similar to Hela, including immortality, Asgardian physiology, and control over life and death. There was even a time his intelligence increased itself to understand the Shi'ar language by looking at it in written form. Although sometimes his powers do not always take the effect he wants, like, for example, during his fight with the Hulk, his body teleported him away from the battle rather than supplying a power that would actually allow him to defeat the Hulk, which is kind of hilarious to be honest. Starting off at number 10, we have Forget-Me-Not. I wanted to start this list off really small, with a character y'all may not know. Mainly because almost no one knows him because that's his power. Appearing in 2014, Forget-Me-Not had actually been a member of the X-Men for several years before this, but thanks to his abilities, no one can remember him. Forget-Me-Not's abilities make it so that he is imperceptible in all forms, basically. The power is so good that even Charles Xavier himself had to place a psychic reminder on himself so that he would remember Forget-Me-Not's existence. Clearly that means some of the most powerful telepaths have difficulty discovering him, let alone remembering him. His power is to be forgotten, but the unique ways this power could be used, and the uniqueness of this power in general, will keep him in my mind. Number 9, we got Eye-Boy. Why is a guy named Eye-Boy on a list of strongest members of the X-Men? I see you, like many of the other mutants, are very judgmental. Trevor Hawkins' body is covered in eyes, 57 to be exact, which give him an array of powers that honestly, you kinda may expect. Microscopic, telescopic, X-ray, night, infrared, and thermal vision are all a part of his power list. But he can also detect chemicals, is an excellent marksman, and is skilled in nonverbal communication. He can almost read other people's minds by reading their behaviors and body language. He is an incredible tracker. He can predict attacks and can read people's histories just by looking at them. He can pinpoint weak spots in machines and people, is able to see electronic wavelengths and microwaves, is able to see past illusions and disguises as well as magic waves. He makes an amazing detective in short. On top of all that, he can even pass what he sees onto others, but he has to be physically close enough for it to work. But to top it all off, the craziest and most unexpected power he possesses recently is solar blasts. We don't know how just yet, but Trevor can emit intense bursts of bright yellow energy and focused beams of extrastellar force that cause sunburns and radiation poisoning. Coming in at number 8, it's Gwenpool. I think Gwenpool has one of the strangest powers. That would be the power of medium interaction, which is because she comes from a reality very much like ours, as in superheroes are fictional people in comic books. So, when Gwen was transported to a pocket universe that recreated her home reality, Gwen's perception of the fictional world allowed her to gain the ability to recognize and manipulate the artistic medium that she was now in. She can see and physically interact with lettering and caption boxes, and touch and even break through panel gutters, allowing her to transport objects short distances through space and time by moving them across panels, and she interacts with different instances of herself from multiple panels on the same page. Now I don't know if you've realized this, but this kind of means Gwendolyn Poole can kind of warp reality in a way. She kind of becomes one of the most crazily powerful characters in comics, at least potentially. She first showed up in Howard the Duck Volume 6 number 1 in November of 2015, and she has actually teamed up with many different characters and teams, including being a member of the X-Men on and off again. Number 7, Laura Kinney. I know, she isn't really new as a character, but Laura Kinney, or X-23, has become the all-new Wolverine, and that is relatively new. She officially joined the X-Men as this Wolverine at the Hellfire Gala in 2021. There are a few characters with powers similar to Wolverine, and there are even a few who are clones of Laura herself. But of all these characters, Laura is certainly the best and definitely the most fan-loved. Her powers are very similar to Logan's, with her primary mutant power being an accelerated healing factor. And obviously, she also has retractable bone claws, only she has 2 in her forearms and 1 in her foot. Well, each foot. She was obviously a clone and grew up being made to be a weapon, so of course she has an extremely haunted past. But with Logan as a father figure in her life, she grew up under him, and she even did the same for Gabrielle Kinney, another clone who Laura considers to be her younger sister. She's already done so much, but I just kinda can't wait to see what else she does as Wolverine. Number 6! It's sync. Everett Thomas isn't a new character by any means, being first introduced in 1994, but while he was a part of Generation X, he didn't officially land on the team until this newest iteration of X-Men. He was also one of the first mutants resurrected by the Five on Krakoa due to the fact that his powers could enable him to act as a substitute for any of the Five who might need to tag out. With that said, what are his powers? Sinch's powers are known as synchronistic power replication. Synch basically produces this really cool funkadelic looking aura that allows him to synchronize with other supers in his vicinity, letting him use their powers unless they leave the vicinity. But what's really interesting is that he doesn't need that person to be completely there. So if you had like a tissue sample from a superpowered person, he could sync with that and it would be enough. Since his resurrection, his powers have been amped up, giving him a limited memory bank of powers he's synced with. He became an official base member of the new X-Men team announced at the Hellfire Gala alongside Laura Kinney in X-Men Volume 5 number 21 in 2022. Number 5. Zorn. Question: what would you do if you and your twin brother developed the mutant ability of having your head become a star? Answer: I honestly don't know how you would still be alive to decide what to do in the first place. Shen Zorn and his twin brother Quan Yin Zorn both developed mutant powers that, in essence, were tiny stars that burned away and replaced their actual heads. They were both isolated, and they both wear super cool looking iron helmets with power dampeners to contain their power from doing too much damage. Shen is called Zorn with a Z, and his head is actually technically a black hole. And to keep things not confusing, Quan Yin is also named Zorn, but with an X. Okay, so what the heck can they do with their powers? Well, both of these characters can produce gravitational electromagnetism, which could actually allow them to heal others and use telepathy, and also, really weirdly, somehow allowed them to sense when people died and speak using shaking gravitational particles. Zorn, the one with a Z, could suck people into his black hole and even turn his black hole back into a sun. They could also both obviously do a lot of damage, using the power of a star to burn, blind, and incinerate people. They both became members of the X-Men at different times. X-Zorn was the first in 2002, but he wasn't always good. And his brother, Z-Zorn, joined more than a few years later. Number 4, it's Dupe. First appearing in X-Force number 116 in 2001, Dupe's origin story is kind of hard to explain, because we don't know for a fact what it is. Captain America tells us he was a US Cold War weapons project, and he apparently had some kind of role in the fall of communism. He was originally a member of X-Force until eventually becoming a member of X-Static. For such an unthreatening character, Dupe is surprisingly strong. He has been described as being an extra-dimensional being with a genius-level intellect, bordering on possible omniscience. And he has a large array of psionic powers, one of which includes controlling Russians. He can change his size and shape at will, allowing him to heal wounds and reassemble parts of his body if they have been removed or cut off. He has an incredible level of super strength and durability as well, with an unknown limit, being able to match and overcome Thor in a fight when he was in a weakened state, taking hits from Mjolnir while he did so. He seems to be able to come back from the afterlife, and he also has a pocket dimension inside himself that he can store things in and summon creatures from. He can also completely break the fourth wall and go across the comic panels. Dupe has defeated the devil all by himself. He is overpowered, and I don't know how anyone loses with him on their team. Coming in at number 3, it's Tempest. Eva Bell first was seen in All New X-Men number 1 in 2012, when we also saw her mutant powers manifest. She was out with friends and a boy when her brother showed up and began to get into a fight with that boy. The stress and duress of the situation caused her powers to pop off, and she completely froze everyone within a city block of her in time for 20 hours until the X-Men showed up, helped her, and then took her in. She's been referred to as near Omega level, with her ability of chronokinesis within a time bubble, meaning she can freeze and slow down time and is one of the best at it in the world. She can also speed up time in the bubble by decades if she chooses to, which is why she's a member of the Five, to age up whoever is being resurrected. And she can even time travel. Although she has shown to lose control over this power from time to time, there is no doubt she is and can become more incredibly powerful. Number 2, Elixir. Joshua Foley, otherwise known as Elixir, is a mutant with Omega level healing abilities. He's incredibly powerful, and while originally was just considered a general threat, he can actually use his powers offensively as well, completely ending lives if he wants to. Using his mutant ability of biokinesis, Elixir is capable of controlling the biological structure of his own and other people's bodies down to the genetic level. Now this started off small, but has grown to allow him to simultaneously heal dozens of people, resurrect himself and others, and even the ability to control, manipulate, and absorb the life forces of other living creatures. Offensively, he can use his death touch to harm others, to cause different types of illness, massive swellings, and organ failure. He's even completely destroyed the body of enemies before. He is one of the core members of the Five, as I'm sure no one is surprised about, and he has been a member of the X-Men ever since he was one of the only surviving mutants who retained his powers at the Xavier Institute after M-Day, and he was trained to become one in 2006's New Mutants. Number 1. Hope Summers. Hope Summers was the first mutant born after the events of M-Day, the mutant decimation, or the day that Scarlet Witch cast No More Mutants. She was then taken into the far future and raised by Cable, being carried around in the coolest baby Bjorn you'll ever see. Not too long after, she returned to the present and her mutant powers finally activated. Her power is basically that of Omega level power manipulation. She can manipulate the powers of other mutants nearby to her, even mimicking their powers, but at full capacity and with complete control over those powers. And she can even take on multiple powers at once, but it is pretty tiring for her to do that. A large part of her role in the Krakoan society is as the leader of the Five, who use their abilities to resurrect the mutants of Krakoa. Her role on the Five specifically is both to boost their powers to their full potential and help them work in synergy with each other perfectly. She also helped terraform Mars alongside Vulcan and Proteus, giving them enough power to actually do it. She is such a cool character, and she first appeared back in X-Men Volume 2 number 205 in 2008, but was a child for much of that until she came of age and joined X-Force and the X-Men.